One of the questions I was asked on our last discussion board was, what is a 10K? All right, the term Form 10K was introduced back in the first chapter. A 10K is a form required by the Securities and Exchange Commission to be filed by publicly traded corporations. Within the 10K includes the financial statements that you've been studying, the balance sheet, the income statement, the cash flow statement, and in great detail. Now, the financial statements are short and sweet, but the 10K spends most of its pages describing the elements in there. This is the first page of the Lowe's 10K for fiscal year 2019. You see, this is page 1 of 128 pages. All right, there is a shorter version called a quarterly report called a 10Q. They file 3 10Qs and 1 10K every year. In addition, the 10K has some significant structure to it. Some of the things that they have to talk about, their business, they describe their business, risk factors that the company faces, and ash and trash in here. One thing some of the students were suggesting, they didn't like the fact that companies' financial statements can be different. Okay, well, they are, but the 10K has some stuff that's required to be the same. For instance, everybody has to fill out item 4, mine safety disclosures, which for my good friends here at Lowe's, not applicable. So I know some of y'all think what you want is that everybody fill out everything the exact same way, but you really don't. What you want to do is learn how to get through to read and figure out what is in these various documents. Now, buried in the 10K in here, going back to the table of contents, the financial statements generally are item 8, part 2, item 8. Okay, if we go in here, it just takes us to more stuff. There is a consolidated balance sheet, consolidated statement of earnings, that's the income statement, consolidated statement of cash flows, and a bunch of other statements that are required. You're in your first accounting course. If you take more accounting courses, you'll learn how to fill out the rest of it. A 10K is written so the average person is supposed to be able to read it. Okay, now I don't mean the average bus driver, but I mean the average person that knows their way around basic accounting is supposed to be able to read it and understand it. In addition to the financial statements, there are extensive notes. So they describe all this stuff in excruciating detail, even when they have a short and sweet summary. So if we go and look at the consolidated statement of earnings, Lowe's does theirs a little bit different than other folks. They're doing ratios on the same page that they're doing the financials, which irritates me because I don't like it like that, but okay, that's just me. As different as y'all might think some of these statements look, they're all the same. Notice that they all start with revenue, that's the money coming in. They subtract the direct expenses or the direct selling expenses, which are the product costs. Those are the ones that vary up and down with the level of sales or activity. And then they subtract the period costs. Product cost, period cost comes from chapter 4 of your text. Product costs are things associated with the product you're selling. Period costs are things that are associated with the time period over which you sold it. Here the company's splitting out depreciation and amortization. It's been my experience about half of companies do and about half companies don't. But it is reported somewhere in the 10K, so you can go look it up. But they generally consolidate all this stuff and make it much simpler and smaller on the financial statement itself. Now we can flip over and look at the one here for Home Depot. And Home Depot has all the same elements in here, they don't necessarily always go in the same order. Their balance sheet comes before their income statement. Okay, so anyway, Home Depot, notice that the Home Depot's is laid out different, but it still starts with revenue, cost of revenue or cost of sales or cost of goods sold, gross profit, operating expenses, and they're splitting out not only selling, general, and admin, but also depreciation and some other stuff. Okay. And revenue is the money coming in, the expenses is the money going out, and the bottom line, net earnings, net income, net profit all go by the same thing. Those numbers are in there for a reason. All right, so that's the basic synopsis of what a 10K looks like. In addition, after they've done presented the statements themselves, then they start describing what all that stuff in the statement is. Some of this stuff you will have heard of, and some of this stuff you will not have heard of. But they go to a lot of detail in here that if you want to know, you just have to read through it. Now, here's an interesting one. They're describing how they do inventory, which is a line up the income. The substantial majority of our merchandise inventories are stated at the lower of cost, first in, first out, or market, as determined by the retail inventory method. Okay, well, basically they value inventory on FIFO. Remember you learned about LIFO and FIFO. This guy, Lowe's and Home Depot both use FIFO for normal reporting of the inventory values. But they're also telling you that we also, if we find that the market value of the inventory is lower, then we will write down the value of the inventory. Okay, so all this stuff that you're learning in the textbook, it's in the 10K. You're expected to be able to read, say, oh, first in, first out. I know what they're talking about. First in, first out, or if the market value is lower, it's lower. Okay, so learning how to read a 10K is like just basically learning how to read. You've learned a lot of terminology. Eventually, with enough practice, and that's what it takes is practice, you'll learn what all this stuff means. All right, now remember the 10K is written by accountants, but it is written for non-accountants like us. If you want to know how to put together a 10K, you should become an accountant. And if you do so, we have two financial accounting courses to teach you how to fill all this stuff out.